Good morning, everybody, and welcome to another Private Flyer Insight session. My name is Alex Ayling, and our company is Private Flyer Show. For many of you that already are aware, we organise regional aviation events, fly-in aviation expos that appear in the UK, in Ireland, and in America. Obviously, the only show that we'll be doing this year and presently is the Private Flyer UK event at Wickham Air Park on the 2nd and 3rd of October. Tickets are available now, and obviously will be refunded if this situation changes, but at the moment, everything looks good for the event on the 2nd and 3rd. And obviously, you can book in your fly-in slot too. All the information is at privateflyershow.com, and we have some great prizes to give away this year. Obviously, a winner will be selected at random. We have a Garmin D2 Delta PX watch to give away, as well as a Bose A20 headset, and a voucher, spending voucher with Poolies worth £250. So some excellent prizes there. All you have to do is either reserve a fly-in slot and obviously fly into the show and purchase a ticket and obviously be at the show for it to be validated. So we are doing another Private Fly Insight session. Obviously we do this as a means to provide information and intelligence based on matters concerning general aviation or flying. And what we do is talk to industry experts from the fields that we're trying to cover. Obviously, I'm excited today to welcome Matthew Day, a leader in his field in private aviation insurance. And I know his invitation is pending at the moment, so he'll be joining us fairly shortly. But it's just to remind everybody again, if you like what you hear and see, please do follow us on Instagram or on Facebook, like us on Facebook. It is always much appreciated and makes all this even more worthwhile. And if you'd like any other topics covered, please do DM me via Instagram or message me via Facebook, or alternatively, send me an email. My email address is on our website. So without any further ado, I'm going to now click and accept Matthew Day to join us on the link, and obviously we'll be covering the topic of aviation insurance, obviously post-COVID. What is the latest situation? Matthew Day is going to provide us with insight on this with some quick-fire questions, which we're going to throw at him, and I'm delighted to welcome Matthew right now. Matthew, good morning to you.
Good morning. Good morning.
Connection works? Everything okay?
Yeah, I'm in business, as they say.
Good stuff.
Yeah. Hi there. Hi, nice
Matthew,
to see you, Ali.
You too. And I'm aware that you're actually going away on a quick staycation or vacation. So I appreciate you giving up your valuable time this morning before you leave at midday.
That's a pleasure. That's a pleasure. I'm not quite sure what sort of holiday it is, but it's a few days away from trying to turn off the machines for a few days, which is an increasingly important issue, I think, for all of us.
Absolutely. No, we do need time to take the mind and the focus away from looking at the laptop and actually have some time to just relax. But anyway, Matthew, getting into it, I want to say thank you for joining us again. Like I ask all our guests when we start off, obviously we've all been in this situation with the COVID-19 situation. How have things been with Hayward coping with this?
Well, I think, as you say, everybody else, we've experienced a whole lot of different changes. I think the headmaster's report would be, doing okay given the circumstances. We're very much a sort of people business, and so switching to Zoom meetings and conference calls isn't quite the same as seeing each other, of course. But the team have all been working at home remotely now, pretty much since lockdown started.
Yeah.
And after a little sort of hiccup getting used to the technology as much as everything else, we seem to be managing well and able to hopefully continue to provide the service. So, as I say, not bad. I think we're learning some new things. I mean, we just touched on it. I think we're now very conscious that we need to make sure that the work-life balance for our staff, as much as anything else, is managed as well. But no, generally, thank you. Haywards are battling through this is the answer, pretty successfully.
And how the workload's been actually for your colleagues and staff, given that there has been less flying, obviously at the beginning of the lockdown period, and thankfully we're all back to flying again. How's the workload been?
Well, again, I'm sure there was that sort of initial flurry as much as anything else is making sure we could get our computers to work at home, and everything took a little bit longer to get used to. We used to be an old-fashioned paper system. We're moving away from that and things like that. So it took a bit of sort of a technical adjustment and things like that. I mean, our business is not seasonal in the sense that most of we renew probably between 400 and 500 clients, their insurance programs every month, and that's pretty standard throughout the year. Maybe a little bit more in April, May than in December, but not dramatically. So in that sense, the workload hasn't dropped off. Obviously, the main question that we felt, or the main work that we've had to start off with, was very much the initial requests from clients about their aircraft are grounded. They're not flying, they didn't know when they'd be flying next, etc., etc., etc. And would there be scope for premium refunds or rebates and things like that? So that was the initial phase. But now, first of all, we've passed through that, of course, and now, of course, flying has sort of officially recommenced as well. So that has changed. But there was initial sort of obvious, everybody with the initial workload, but we've now settled down into it, as is the aviation sort of industry has settled back. So initially, but now we're getting through it. Our airline team, we're part of the Gallagher Aerospace Group, who do a large number of the world's airlines. As you imagine, the impact on the airline industry in many ways is far greater than it has been on GA and private aviation sector. So they had some pretty big issues to deal with because their clients, the airlines around the world, have some pretty fundamental impact. But ours is because our client base, I guess, has been less well affected or less adversely affected. The workload has sort of stabilised a bit now. Thank you.
So Matthew, you touched upon it just a moment ago. Obviously, you mentioned premium discounts, and there was that. Initial inquiry on that side of your side of the business. But what is actually the situation regarding premium discounts, rebates, refunds for owners that didn't fly during that initial lockdown period?
So like a good insurance broker, it's all about reading the small print in the policy. And therefore, the answer, it kind of depends, is the answer. The policies are set up in different ways, and obviously we set them up in different ways for different client groups, and obviously other brokers do it differently. So there's no single answer to how it's done. But I suppose in simple terms, there are a couple of options. A lot of the larger fleets, and I'm talking from the airlines downwards, have policies that are a minimum deposit premiums and then adjustable at expiry. So a lot of those, once they got to the end of their policy year, they make an adjustment based on the amount of flying they do, etc., etc., etc. So those ones obviously will naturally work themselves out as they come up to renewal, as they might be. There are others which have simply provisions during the policy for adjustments anyway. So that's again resolved, just simply sort of washes itself out. And I suppose the majority of the group, and certainly we do a large number of work with the smaller sort of the GA sector, have layup provisions or ground risk only provisions after a set time phrase. So for example, if your aircraft, traditionally, of course, it's for something like if your aircraft goes into a fairly serious maintenance cycle and it's off, it's not flying for 2 months or something like that. A lot of clients would historically ask for reduced cover. So a lot of us, and again, the time scale varies, but I suppose for a lot of our GA clients in the UK, those rebate or provisions, or whatever you want to call them, would have only kicked in after the first 30 days. So what we've done for a lot of the clients is that we can't give you a rebate after 30 days because we don't know how much we're rebating. Because if they then started flying on day 31, then technically they would only get a rebate for 1 day, which frankly, the process of essentially cancelling the policy and restarting the policy is a disproportionate amount of work and time and effort for what may be a relatively small amount. So for our clients, majority of our clients, we've said is that at their renewal, there will either be an automatic provision to review the policy based on, you know, minimum deposits, or that we will then adjust it retrospectively. But so you can't give a rebate for ground risk only cover when you don't know how long the aircraft is going to be on the ground for. And we could have, of course, given a rebate for a day and then have a phone call the following day saying, I'm going to flying tomorrow, can you put me back up to full flight risks? And then we've had to go through all the process again and things like that. So for the majority of our clients, some have natural provisions built into their policies anyway, but for the majority of clients, we've been adjusting it once we know how long they were on the ground for. Obviously, some clients, their policies were due to renew sort of a month into the 6 weeks, 5 weeks into the lockdown. So essentially, they'd got to the end of their policy period anyway. So in those cases, the rebates weren't anything to be gained. If you only had 32 days of your policy to go, and you had a 30-day waiting period, the rebate is you know, nominal, as it were. So a lot of adjustments have been now. In fact, now we're beginning to work through a lot of adjustments. To be fair to say, actually, excuse me, a lot of our clients obviously were able to continue flying at a reduced level anyway,
right?
Because not every sector of the general aviation industry was grounded. Of course, our clients who fly air ambulances or do pipeline inspection or air ambulances, they've all been flying. Yeah. And of course, at no stage was Class G airspace closed in this country. So people could fly. I mean, you've got to be able to land somewhere, accept that, and take off, of course. But a lot of our clients, and then very quickly, of course, the moment the restrictions were lifted on a Friday, and within minutes, I mean, literally within minutes, we had emails in from clients saying, oh, I want to go flying tomorrow. You know, it was quite easy to jump back up. Weather was nice at the time. Excuse me, in the middle of May, I seem to think. So it jumped back. So there are adjustments are being made. Each person has to be treated slightly separately because everybody's policy is on a slightly different basis. And a number of clients, you know, fundamentally, you've still got to insure your aircraft even if you're not flying it as well, because it can be damaged in a hangar or knocked in the, you know, another aircraft.
Like a flying school, for instance.
So it made it.
Yeah. As an example, there, all their aircraft would have been grounded at that point. You know, so we then had to have kept their insurance going as well for the reasons you just said there. You know, there could be weather damage rather than flying damage.
And for example, those who purchase their aircraft and do it with through you know, a finance company like Lombard or Close or those other providers, you know, the finance provisions require them to keep the insurance in force throughout the period of time as well. Rather like you and I, if we have a house and we go on holiday, we still have to insure it even if we're not using it. So adjustments are being made and worked through for our clients. Each one is not each one, but you know, there are different circumstances for each client depending on where how their policies were placed. And as I say, probably different insurers have slightly different facilities, but unlike other classes of business, aviation has always allowed clients to put their aircraft onto ground risks, for example, if they're going into maintenance. So unlike, again, car insurance, when you go on holiday for 2 weeks and park your car in the garage, you can't get a refund from your car insurance company. You've always been able to do that in aviation, not necessarily for 2 weeks, but for a month or something like that, to allow, for example, if an aircraft, you know, has to be maintained and it can't get it into the engineering shop for 6 weeks. It's quite clear that you can see when the aircraft is flying and when it's not flying. So there's always been that provision. Obviously, historically, this provision has not been quite so widely used as we've experienced. And so we're working through changes and making adjustments for clients now. Majority of our clients, I think, on balance, and this is not based on any science, my gut instinct talking to my colleagues. In fact, the majority of our clients retain their policy on the full flight basis, with an agreement that we could then retrospectively work out the rebate at the end of the policy period and deal with it that way. And that's how it provides security. At least you know got the insurance as well.
And we'll,
it's worked okay.
Yeah, I was going to say, Matthew, as a consequence of all this and everything you're mentioning right now, will aircraft owners or pilots can expect their premiums to to go up because of COVID-19?
Sure. Good question, and one that we get all the time. The answer is that there won't be, and I say there won't be, you never know, but there's no direct consequence between COVID and aviation insurance terms going up. There has been a background trend for the last 2 years in aviation rates for rate increases, brought about by global airline losses, because it's a relatively small market. The same insurance company that insures a client's R44 or PA28 may also insure British Airways 747s, well, not 747s, but you know what I mean. And so there's been global losses over the last couple of years. Obviously, the impact of the Boeing 737 MAX has had a huge impact on grounding exposures, and airlines having to ground those aircraft for technical issues ahead of, again, COVID and big insurance claims. So, and then outside of just aviation, those are the same insurance companies on a global basis that insure the Eastern US hurricane season. Tragically, we'll discover in months coming ahead, you know, the port in Beirut is insured, things like that. So the global insurance industry, not the aviation insurance industry, which is a very small part of it, the global insurance industry has been moving towards rate increases in the last 18 months. And that's going to continue anyway. Of course, there will now be other losses that have been brought on by COVID. For example, business interruption insurance is a very big claim that a lot of companies are making. There's an argument about whether that's covered as a result of a pandemic. That's not for you and I to debate. That's for high-powered lawyers to argue about the validity of that. So there will be other money drained out of the global insurance pool, which means that they will need to, and of course, inevitably, a number of risks simply ceasing to operate. Commercial airlines just going out of business. So the premium income into that pool, the finite pool, will need to be refilled with money. If there are fewer players, then mathematically, you know, the logic says it goes up. But it won't be as a direct consequence of COVID. It will be a wider global insurance shift. The global insurance industry has been running at a loss for probably the last 10 years, year on year, but it's bolstered itself by its investments in the stock markets. But of course, the stock markets have taken a hit as well. So there is a squeeze on income coming into this insurance as an asset class, not an insurance, but just for investors. So there is a trend upwards. We are experiencing it, but we were experiencing it before. There won't be a direct consequence, but there will be an indirect consequence, because underwriters will have less money and will be more selective about how they put their capital at risk. And the way they put their capital at risk is they charge a premium for that risk, and they're going to assess every class of business, whether it's a private aircraft, an international airline, aerospace products manufacturer, or a shipping company, or a multi-million-dollar mass transit railway system, or whatever it might be. They're going to weigh up each one of those risks and decide whether that particular risk is worth the return that they get from the premium. So that's going to happen, and all underwriters are getting more, not stringent, that's probably the wrong, are getting more attentive to issues and are weighing up, do they really need to be in this class of business? Is it worth it for the exposure? And obviously that's a shifting thing, and global issues outside do impact the aviation industry. But not directly, but as a broader picture, yes, inevitably, insurance, in the same way that, I guess, rightly or wrongly, our car insurance, our household insurance will, you know, I've just renewed my household insurance, like all our clients, I have to buy insurance, and I wasn't happy to see my household insurance go up, because clearly it hasn't changed the exposure. I haven't done anything to the house, but it's just a consequence of global underlying trends, rather than clearly me suddenly having a burst pipe, or suddenly the flood tides rising in my village or something. So unfortunately, it was something that we've been talking to our clients beforehand, but increases are ahead. Now, that's not to mean that people can't do things about that, and certainly we encourage our clients to think about how they can control those things.
Well, Matthew, I've got two questions I'm going to put into one here, because you actually have kind of given a good overview here on one of the questions I was going to ask, which was, other factors that are going to impact the GA market. You have given an explanation on that as well, in terms of players in the market when airlines are suddenly becoming bankrupt. There's a lull in the marketplace. But a word we haven't used in a while, and going to use it now: Brexit. A lot of people want Brexit for COVID-19 right now, but what will that impact general aviation insurance?
Yeah, you're right. It's a word that we'd almost forgotten, hadn't we, for a few months, after being about the only word that we all ate and slept for a while. We suddenly forgot about Brexit. The answer is that my perspective is, first of all, we still don't know what Brexit is going to look like. Insurance is a global industry already. You can't insure an airline, just British Airways, Lufthansa, any airline in the world isn't just insured by the insurance companies in Germany or Britain or America. It's insured around the world, literally around the world. And the same goes in pretty much, even in general aviation. So we probably have 20 major insurers with whom we use to place aviation business. And it's probably split 50-50 between those that are based in the UK and those that are based elsewhere in the world. And there are many, many more, but the key players that we use. But even those ones based in the UK, probably again, half of those are actually foreign owned. So, most of our business is not necessarily even placed with UK insurance companies, even though we're based in the UK. There's nothing odd about that. There's nothing strange about that. That's just the nature of the global insurance market. How that's going to change, we don't know, because the rules aren't clear. We have activated a strategy that we started several years ago, of course, and then got delayed, about setting up a European operation and transferring business. I guess what it will mean to the client ultimately is there's going to be a bit more paperwork. There's going to be companies that are trading names of other companies for legal purposes. But fundamentally, for our clients, we don't see any change in the quality of who they place their insurance with, insurance companies, the security of their insurance companies, the cover they get. But it may be that they get, rather than a 20-page letter from us, they get a 30-page letter in 4 different languages, because we've got to produce it in different ways to cover all the bases, or whatever it is. So it's a little unclear. It won't, directly impact in that sense on what they get, but there will be, I'm afraid to say, it's going to be, from our perspective, quite a big of an administrative issue, dealing with clients who we didn't distinguish by whether they were in or out of Europe. Now we're going to have to treat them as separate bodies, although they're getting exactly the same service as they were beforehand. But it's going to be a bit more of an admin issue, rather than, from a client's perspective, there should be no, apart from more paper perhaps, which is not good.
So with that in mind, obviously more paperwork to be expected. How can your customers keep their insurance costs down? What could you give them?
I tried to sort of break it down into 3 simple areas, which is minimize the exposure. And by that I mean is, for example, when lockdown lifted, to people hadn't been flying, is don't just jump in the airplane and assume that you were as good as you were 2 months ago when you had been flying. But make sure you do your proper flight planning. Make sure perhaps you have a flight with an instructor. We support the General Aviation Safety Council, and they produced a very good video that you can find on their website about returning to flying safely, which is kind of an example in one sense about minimizing the risk. Make sure you know what you're doing. Just because you could do it the week before lockdown doesn't mean your skills haven't, things like that. So first of all, in every sense is, make sure that the risk you are taking, you have done everything you can to minimize it. The second aspect is what I would say is what I describe as to manage the exposures. A lot of our clients maybe have 3 or 4 friends on the policy as additional pilots. Now, maybe one of those pilots isn't flying or hasn't flown on it for a couple of years. And that pilot may be the pilot with the fewest hours. If they're not flying on it, take them off the policy, because that could have an impact on the premium. Likewise, for example, the value of your aircraft. If you have over-insured it, I've got it too high a value, that might impact the premium. Although on the flip side, if it's not insured for its proper value, you need to review that. And make sure that you're buying what you want in terms of the policy, or managing the exposure. So if you're not, if you don't need 10 pilots on it because only one of you is using it, then take the other 9 pilots off. If the value's too high, reduce it. And the third aspect of my minimize, manage, and the third aspect is mitigate. And mitigate is one of the, well, first of all, it rhymes with minimize and manage. But by mitigate, I mean transfer it through to insurance, and that's obviously our role. And in terms of doing that, it's being aware that there are in fact only so many insurance companies and so many insurance brokers. Shopping around at the moment is not very successful. A number of our clients will know, or we've had a lot of inquiries from people because some of our competitors have struggled to continue to provide the same level of cover that they had to. I hope they recover. A competition is something we welcome. But it is a relatively small market. So going out and getting 15 quotes doesn't necessarily achieve the right objective. But make sure that you are comparing apples for apples. So really, it's a minimize the exposures in the first place. If you don't need to go flying, don't fly. Simple as that. I mean, it really is the safest way to keep your insurance costs down and avoid accidents. If you don't have to fly, don't fly. So minimize first of all. Manage the exposure. So don't have people on the policy that you don't need to have. Don't buy a level of cover that perhaps you don't need, for example. Or make sure that the cover you need is exactly what you want. And then finally, make sure, ideally, you've got the best insurance solution. And there are obviously a number of different providers, competitors. Some of them are better at different classes, as are we. We don't do everything. We're happy to admit we're not always able to provide the most competitive quote ourselves. But selectively shop around, but be aware that, first of all, at the moment, underlying prices are going up. So if you get a renewal quote from a client, from your broker that suggests your premium's gone up 20%, don't have a knee-jerk reaction and suddenly think that you're being personally penalised, because it may well be that everybody else is getting a 30% increase. I'm not saying that is the case, but trends are going up. We have a lot of phone calls from people at the moment who have just got their renewal quotes from other brokers, and after probably 10, 12 years of either flat premiums or even slight reductions, to start getting a letter saying, I'm afraid to say your premium's gone up, has inevitably led people to look at it. So minimize, manage, mitigate.
So Matthew, before I ask my final question, obviously I'm mindful with the ticking clock. I've probably got about 3-4 minutes left. If customers or potential customers want to find out more information or ask you more things related to what they've heard from this insight session, where can they find more information? Who would you advise they get in contact with? Obviously, we can provide that as a link at the end of this video.
Of course, thank you.
Where can they find more information from Hayward?
The first thing is our website, which is www.haywards.net. I think you'll probably put that up later on afterwards.
Yeah.
Has, we hope, a fairly clear description of the different types of cover. There's a button there, click on for contact. There's a lot of risk questionnaires that if people could complete and send to us, that will be helpful. I'm very happy again and again. If you stick my email address on afterwards, I'm very happy to get to it. And depending, perhaps Alex, we can look at this. If there's 5,000 people watching this, and frankly, what else are they doing? And they're all asking the same couple of questions. Then maybe, if you want, I'm very happy to do some kind of follow up. But I will take the emails as they come along and try and answer them as well. Might be a little delayed this week, but yes, company website gives an overview. There are some risk questionnaires that they can complete and send back to us. And please, yes, put my email address out there, and I'll do my best to answer. And as I say, if I become an overnight internet sensation, and then I will be available for future showings, as they say.
Yeah, get in contact with your agent.
Yeah, I hope people don't make me an overnight sensation, because that would say something about how dull life is rather than how good I am. But there we are.
No, Matthew, it's always great to see you on the screen at the moment, not seeing you in person at the moment. But okay, I said I was going to ask you one more question. So if we were going to wrap up, what is Matthew Day's vision or changes that you expect to see over the next 1 to 3 years in the GA market?
Well, a GA insurance market rather than the GA market. The market is going to carry on. We've obviously got Brexit is going to in some ways be more of a fundamental issue to us than COVID, because COVID is a risk that will hopefully pass and things like that. So there's going to be a lot of changes to the way we handle our business through Brexit, but that's an internal issue for us, and we've got to take that on. We are, of course, as are others, we're looking to shift to use technology a little bit smarter, but we hold firmly that this is a people business, and actually even under lockdown, we are actively talking, having meetings with underwriters on a face-to-face basis, that ultimately you can sustain Zoom calls for a while, but after a while we do need to meet people. So there will still stick to that human contact, but we are looking at, as you'd expect, making smarter use of technology. From a business perspective, we're moving to what I think the jargon is called agile working. We're going to have fewer desks in the office. Everybody's going to have laptops. We're all going to be sitting in coffee shops, as it were, doing meetings rather than wearing suits and sitting in the city. So the working practices will be a little bit different. But we also want to get out and about. We miss our visits to our clients' airfields, hangars, around the country. We miss our show, so we're hoping that we're going to come along to your event in October, the Private Flyer Show at Wickham. I think that's on the 2nd and 3rd of October, if I got that right.
Right, sure, thank you very much for the plug. Yes,
I'm sure you promoted that yourself. So we're looking at shows to go to, because we feel fundamentally this is, so much can be done online on computers and things like that, but fundamentally aviation insurance is all about a degree of trust, that what we say and what we provide in terms of really a bit of paper which says trust me, you're insured, relies on you trusting the person rather than the computer, and that comes down to getting out and meeting and greeting. So we very much hope that human aspect will come back quickly. Bit smarter technology, a bit better use of the technology, but ultimately a focus on the people aspect of the sector, which is so much more interesting, because you learn so much more from, I know you know that as well as I do, going to a client's hangar at an airfield in February might not appeal in one sense, but actually you go into the hangar and you kick a tire and you talk to an engineer and you find out so much interesting stuff about what they're getting up to. And no amount of technology can replace that human thing. So I hope that we will overcome and we'll be stronger from it from a technology point of view, but fundamentally the personal service is, I believe personally, is essential to remain, and what we will continue to offer.
Very well said, Matthew. And let me just take this opportunity again to say thank you very much for giving us your time today. And obviously, have a great break wherever you're going. This will be posted, I think, within the next 24 hours. So again, all this insight hugely valuable for those that choose to view it. Matthew, again, thank you very much, and I look forward to speaking with you and hopefully meeting you soon.
Well, let's hope we can meet up in Wickham. 2nd and 3rd
Absolutely.
of October, private flyer. Be at that show, people.
Perfect. Thanks, Matthew. Take care.
Alex, goodbye. Take care.
Goodbye. Bye, Matthew.